We're off and running, and we are less than 12 hours away from the start of the madness. No, 15. 15 hours. Poor math.
I have trouble.
It is not going to start at 6 a.m., but we are fired up to get this ready to get going. And I'll just say this. That gentleman right there, Jonathan Von Tobel. I'm Tim Murray. Best bets coming up bottom of the hour. Mike Golick Jr. coming up in just a little bit. Walking into the casino today, circa, and this will not be an isolated occurrence. Anywhere you go here in this town, JVT, you could feel it. Tomorrow, Friday, two of the biggest days in the entire year in Las Vegas, and you can already feel it. Yesterday, a little bit, but today, coming in at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, craps tables packed with people. Tomorrow, it is going to be wild, man. It's already starting, and by late night tonight, I would imagine the sports book will be packed, the tables will be all packed. It's here. It's Christmas Eve.
It is, and actually, I'll give Robert DeCourta a little bit of credit up on Twitter at Bobby D. Red Wing, who had tweeted a couple of us, and I think you were in on it too, said tomorrow and Friday, best consecutive days in sports that we get. And it's hard to find better consecutive days. We can talk about single days. I think the first thought that came to mind for a second would be that New Year's Six turnaround into a national championship potentially, but there's just not the volume that you're going to get with some of these contests. This is incredible what we're going to get on Thursday and Friday.
You know, there's been a lot of tweaks in our lives that I would say haven't been great, and from a sports standpoint. Do you like the play-in tournament, the expansion of the NBA playoffs? Do you like an extra team being added to, the NFL playoffs going to 7? But when they figured out, kind of late to be honest, hey, you know what we should do? We should put all these games on different television networks so you can watch all of them instead of having it on one. There was like a nostalgia to it, Gumbel coming on, and it was his beck and call where we went, but starting tomorrow, 12:15 Eastern, first game up, Mississippi State, Michigan State, just full-on wall-to-wall, no middle-of-the-day break. It gets a little slower, but still, there's no stop for 12-plus hours for 2 consecutive days. I agree with the sentiment, and I can't wait to get this thing rolling tomorrow and to break it down more in depth as the show goes on. Colby Dant will join us here in studio in hour number 2. We'll head to We'll head to Dayton and bring in BJ Rains in hour number 3, like we did yesterday with Brian Roth of Colorado State, as the Rams. Good call by JVT, sir. Never in doubt. That was outside of trailing 4-2 at the first media timeout. That was an ass whooping from start to finish. Colorado State, who needs Isaiah Stevens? And they now move on, and they will play tomorrow in Charlotte against Texas.
Yeah, that's, I think, the important thing here, because everything is obviously going to get wrapped up in the conversation around Virginia and the offense, right? And the missing, whatever it was, 19 consecutive field goal attempts, or, the great, by the way, great job from the crew in terms of the television broadcast to put up last field goal and, the literal time in which it actually happened. Brilliant trolling in this matchup, but lost in that, and I don't know, you watch basketball at a really high level. You used to play at a high level. I watched the Colorado State defense that was on its P's and Q's. They were moving well. They were not giving up open looks. Virginia definitely missed some easy shots, but for the most part, Colorado State defensively was very impressive. But on the flip side, which should not be lost, Colorado State averaged 1.1 points per possession against a defense that still was one of the best statistically in the country against Virginia. They took that pack line defense and tore it apart, get into the basket with ease. Like you mentioned, Stevens didn't really have to do that much. I thought it was an incredibly balanced performance from Colorado State all the way through, offensively and defensively. And now as we move forward, get to take on Texas, a Texas team that we've seen at times defensively have its own slip-ups throughout the entire year, Tim. And just watching Colorado State on the same court with a team, yes, it's the bad ACC. It didn't really look that great. But a team like Virginia from the ACC, a lot of people generally think ACC is a better conference. That looked like a team that was on par, if not better, with the athletes they had on the floor. That was an incredible performance.
So I think this leads to the question, because I've done a bunch of radio hits this week. We've talked about it on the show. you and I love the Mountain West. We live here in Las Vegas. We watch this conference quite a bit. We bet this conference quite a bit. Now, this has been a conference historically that has performed quite poorly outside of San Diego State's run to the national championship last year. And some of it has to do with, home court advantages, with the altitude situations. And we'll find out later tonight, right? Another Mountain West team will be in action. They're the underdog. Boise State right now catching 2.5 against Colorado. Is this a good sign for for the Mountain West, JVT? Is this an omen for what is to come to buck the trends of, hey, yes, we've been underachieving in years past, but this year is going to be different? Or do you think it was a one-off and that Virginia was just that bad?
No, I mean, I do think that this might be a sign of things to come here for the Mountain West, potentially. There were a lot of people that were bringing up the narrative for the Mountain West just coming into this matchup against Virginia. Yep. And I do think, look, I get the sample size is large-ish when it comes to the Mountain West, but to invoke teams and performances from decades ago, or whatever it is, because I get it, I guess, but this is an entirely different team. And this is a team that, and even some of the teams that were from the Mountain West last year that got into this tournament could have grown, could have gotten better. I do think that it's not the best tack to take to go, oh, well, this team back in 2000, whatever, they struggled. So, I mean, the Mountain West got to struggle this time around. If you watched that game yesterday, that looked like a full-on tournament team that deserved to be there. And by the way, we should also note, very well coached too. I thought Medved did a really great job with what he was doing offensively as well. So I think that this might be a sign of things to come for the Mountain West. I'm really intrigued by what's going to happen here. Obviously, a couple of them in coin flip spots. New Mexico, about a 2-point favorite. You've got Dayton and Nevada sitting around a 1.5 point line.
They're all basically, outside of UAB San Diego State, they're all essentially kind of coin flip games. Utah State and TCU.
Tonight.
Tonight, Boise State and Colorado. So, look, this is a conference that's been I want to say loved. They've been liked by the advanced metrics out there. Clearly not really liked outside of San Diego State based off of the committee, right? You saw the reaction that Boise State had. And we'll find out more about that with BJ Rains in the third hour of the program. But this is a conference that, after New Mexico beat Boise State in the quarterfinals of the Mountain West Conference Tournament, Jalen House was asked following the game, how does it feel to make the NCAA tournament? They would have missed the dance if they had not made the run to win it. So it tells you what the committee thought of this team, and now you get to play the games and find out. So it's going to be really intriguing to see how they fare, and we've got another opportunity tonight with Boise State and Colorado coming up around 9-10-ish there. And I misspoke. I said 2.5. Market's betting Colorado right now. It's 3.5 across the market right now, JVT.
Yeah, and I don't think I'm entirely surprised, again, given the general consensus of, I think, what people believe the Mountain West to be. It's kind of an interesting push and pull dynamic, because I think that there are some metrics that paint some of these Mountain West teams in positive lights if you look at them. New Mexico and I think San Diego State are probably at the top of that list. Colorado State up there as well. I think Bartorvik's got them now as a top 30 team, somewhere in that range. But as far as some of these others, I think you could look at a Boise State that did catch fire at the tail end of the season. But if you dive into their schedule, we're beating up on the drag of the Mountain West. There was a Air Force in there twice. So Wyoming's in there. So Fresno State's. How much do you really buy into what was a turnaround and then a short stint in the Mountain West Conference tournament? So kind of understand this. I think Colorado as well at times has kind of been a darling to a certain extent for some of the people that shape the market. So I think those two things come together to get it to where it's at right now.
And Colorado was a team that had a lot of preseason hype. They were preseason 28th. In Ken Pom, I think for the most part underachieved this year, and you saw glimpses of it. And one of the performances, and maybe I shouldn't hold it against them. About a month ago, you saw Colorado in what was the spot of spots against Arizona, and they got blown out at home by 20. But this is a Colorado team that is very capable, good 3-point shooting team. Both these teams can shoot it well. I can guarantee you this. This game will be more entertaining than what we watched between Virginia and Colorado State, even though for JVT, I think that was very entertaining.
I mean, there was a car wreck aspect to it, though.
You
know
also
what I mean?
laid it with Colorado State. You get to sit back and enjoy that. I mean,
but there was a dude, can this continue to get this worse? Is it really going to get that bad kind of a deal?
So we were leaving work, and I put the game on the radio driving home, and it was I got in the car, and it was the first possession of the game. And I'm listening to it, and, the play-by-play announcers describing it. And then I just hear, meh. I'm like, did they really get a shot clock violation on the first possession?
Oh, yeah.
They sure did. All right, another question that I think has been posed and asked all week long is, who's going to be that double-digit seed to make the run? 15 consecutive years we've seen a double-digit seed make it to the Sweet 16. Who will that team be this year? And will we see the redemption of the 12 seeds? Last year, 0-4, straight up and against the spread. But you look at some of the betting splits that are out there. We have them up at VSiN.com. James Madison getting love. Grand Canyon getting love. UAB getting love. So I have a poll question up at Tim Murray. JVT retweeted it. Who is the 12 seed most likely to win outright? As of right now, UAB is the biggest dog at catching 7 against San Diego State. Grand Canyon, St. Mary's. James Madison's taking on Wisconsin. McNeese State is taking on Gonzaga. Early voting has James Madison as the leader in the clubhouse. As we hit a break, JVT, who would you say is the most likely 5 seed to go down?
I voted, and I think you know who I picked. The Blazers, baby.
UAB. No love for the Blazers, at least on this poll. You can chime in at Tim Murray. We're free on YouTube right now. YouTube.com/VSiN Live. Mike Golick Jr. He'll join us next.
This is VSiN Primetime with Tim Murray and Jonathan Von Tobel on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Hey, folks, we are getting closer to the madness. Yeah, it started yesterday, but the full thing starts tomorrow, so you still got plenty of time to check out our March Mania betting guide. Pro Guide includes first-round game previews, brackets from VSiN hosts and experts, NCAA tournament betting trends from Steve Mackinnon and others. Check it out now, vsin.com/madness. That's VSIN.com/madness. Remember, sign up for a pro sub full year, less than $200, vsin.com/subscribe, promo code PRIME.
That's Jonathan Von Tobel. I'm Tim Murray. You can follow us on Twitter. He's at me, JVT. I'm
Correct.
at Tim Murray. And our next guest is at Mike Golick Jr. He is the co-host of the Gojo and Golick Show, which you can catch weekday mornings on the DraftKings Network from 8 to 10 a.m. And then an hour of it on VSiN from noon to 1 Eastern. And he joins us on our progressive guest line. A lot to get to, Mike, since we last chatted. A lot of free agency and all of that. But I do want to just continue to hit on what to expect from the draft a little bit. We saw Caleb Williams work out today at USC, his pro day. Since we last chatted, Justin Fields has been shipped off to the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's an inevitability. So you've seen Caleb Williams up close and personal a handful of times. It feels like we got to the point where there was a collective, I don't know if he's even that good. Let's talk about the positives. This guy's going to step in. He's going to be the starter day one there in Chicago. What do you expect to see from Caleb Williams in his rookie season in Chicago?
I think I expect a more comfortable Caleb Williams than we got during the 2023 U.S. season. I think and saw Dan Orlovsky and the NFL Live crew talking a lot about what they lost from 22 to 23 in Jordan Addison. But I would also say what they lost up front on the offensive line probably netted the biggest result for Caleb Williams, who was constantly under duress during this past season. I think for him and Drake May, that was one of the big similarities with their game. But when you go back and look at 2022 and you see so many good moments where when he did have protection, what Caleb Williams can do operating from the pocket is sensational. And I think what Chicago has built up front on that offensive line that they've invested in meaningfully in the last few drafts and the weapons they're starting to put around him, I think we're going to get a lot closer to the 2022 guy than the 2023 guy that worried a few people, but I think got far too much coverage on the negative end for all the gifts that this player has.
What'd you make of the Vikings trade for 2 first-round picks now, and what do you think it's for?
I mean, they're probably going after a quarterback, right? You got to do something, especially, I think, because I'll be interested to see how all of this affects the Justin Jefferson proceedings. A guy who already had infinite leverage now walks into a building that's going to need a new quarterback and wants to make sure that the best wide receiver in football is on their team and handsomely paid. He can essentially ask for whatever he wants, but I think you've got to do right by this entire organization and where you were in the process. by going up there and trying to get the best quarterback you possibly can. They're armed to the teeth to do it. The question just becomes, because I think after all the wailing and gnashing of teeth, I think Caleb Williams and Drake May are going to go 1 and 2 off the board. And after that, it's just going to be, do the Patriots want to trade down? Does Jaden Daniels start to fall a little bit from there? And how high would that team, the Minnesota Vikings, have to go up in order to get a quarterback? Are the Giants players at that sitting there at 6? Do they have to worry about them? Right now, that seems like the cliff where I'd imagine Minnesota's loading up and probably getting ready to move.
You know, it's interesting that you bring that up, thinking Drake May is going to go too, because there is a collective shrug saying, I don't know. And, you know, Daniel Jeremiah, even in his most recent mock draft, said as much. He said, Washington is not talking. Nothing's coming out of Washington. I've asked around, and, you know, being from there, they're like, nothing's coming out of there, which is a nice change. But when you look at the betting market, it shifted to Jaden Daniels, Mike, being the favorite now at minus 170 to go number 2. Drake May falling to plus 135. Just from your personal belief and breakdown of those two particular quarterbacks, if you were Dan Quinn, Cliff Kingsbury, and Adam Peters, which route would you go at number 2?
I would go Drake May. I think that's a player who's been extremely productive with a lot less talent around him offensively than the other 2 quarterbacks we're talking about at the top of the draft. He's a guy who, again, when you cut on, when I watch Caleb Williams and Drake May coming off the 2022 season, remarkably similar players, both of whom could create on the fly, both of whom had to operate under duress. North Carolina, really, it's just Josh Downs and the Pips that year as far as the wide receiving core, and Drake May somehow made it work. His ability to evade pressure, the size that he does it at, too, by far the biggest of any of the quarterback prospects that we're talking about here. And that's the one thing that worries me a little bit with Jaden Daniels, and it's the reason we know he didn't get measured when he went to the Combine in Indianapolis, is this is a guy that's much more on the thin side. And when we've had these conversations in the past about quarterback height or quarterback weight, it really, I think, boils down to, as much as anything, the specifics of the build. And with Jaden Daniels and his style of play, he's someone that puts his body in harm's way a fair amount. You love it because it's in the name of trying to make winning plays, and he helps his team so much, and he bends the field with all of his ability. But it's something you do worry about at the next level. Can he corral some of that and become this incredible dual threat player that he has the capability of doing? I think with all of that on the table, for me, picking with 2 overall, the safer bet would be a guy that I've seen play at the high level, who has some things he needs to clean up in his own right, does Drake May, but who does that with the prototype build and a ton of production to back it up.
Mike, you've kind of hit on something that I believe in, and I maybe you can answer this question, and it's why. Why do we do this? Why, like, we do this whole thing where, like you said, all the gnashing of teeth, right? It's like, hey, Jaden Daniels, and hey, you know what, J.J. McCarthy might be the second best guy. I go back to last year where at one point everybody's talking about, hey, it might be Will Levis instead of Bryce Young, and everything fell as we expected. The Joe Burrow draft, everything fell as we expected. Why do we always do this around this time?
I think we're bored. I think it makes for good content. I think also, and I will give people some bail in this, I do think when we watch football during college football season, for a lot of us, myself included, I watch college football as a college football analyst during the year. So I'm trying to figure out, going into a game, what's the story, who does what well for what team, and how is it going to affect the outcome of that game, and watch less so with an eye of trying to prognosticate who's going to make that jump to the next level. And so it is possible to turn on the tape after the season for some people who've been watching with one eye and now have a different lens on and come to a different conclusion. But that being said, for the rest of this, I think it's an exercise in somewhat overthinking. Some people value different things. I fell into this trap with Trey Lance a few years ago in the draft, where San Francisco traded up to that 3rd overall pick. And I talked about, hey, when you do that, you want to take a risk on the upside of a player with that kind of ability. It's the argument a lot of people are going to make for J.J. McCarthy in this draft. You could even say the same for Jaden Daniels. And I'm trying to reevaluate my own beliefs in that, about how much I think you can do and take that risk with what's asked now of so many of these quarterbacks to come into a lot of these situations, play now and play at an incredibly high level, sometimes in offenses and on teams that are devoid of the kind of talent that can properly support them. And so maybe everyone kind of deals with that reckoning of figuring out the things that they value, and those being different all across the industry.
Mike Golic Jr. joining us on our Progressive Guest Line. He is the co-host of Gojo and Golic with his father, of course. You can catch that DK Network every morning, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern, then an hour of it on VSiN from noon to 1. Let's get to the wide receivers, Mike, because Malik Neighbors is getting some love. Understandably so. He's awesome, as is Marvin Harrison Jr. And I think Todd McShay said it, I want to say on Ryan Russillo's podcast, he was like, both of these guys are elite. Saying one's better than the other isn't necessarily a knock, but when you look at Marvin Harrison Jr., who on the betting odds is a massive favorite to be the first non-quarterback selected, do you think there is a chance that Malik Nabers could jump Marvin Harrison Jr.?
Yeah, I think it was interesting for me early on in the draft process. There was part of me that went, oh, yeah, look at how explosive Malik Nabers is on each and every play. It jumps off the screen at you. I've said to a lot of people, you don't have to know what great wide receiver play looks like to know that guy moves in a way that not many people are physically capable of doing. I wouldn't be surprised because we are talking about 1A, 1B, elite, high-caliber players. I will say, though, as I settled in and watched the both of them back again and tried to watch them in comparison to each other, it's really hard to ignore how complete, smooth, efficient, all the above Marvin Harrison Jr. is. Everything about him reeks of a guy who is so ready to walk in and be your number one wide receiver almost immediately. At times, would I like a little bit more separation? Sure. But the guy's incredibly physical, smooth in all of his routes, works well physically at the top of routes, uses his hands really well, and just overall in the biggest games of Ohio State season, this last year especially, with a quarterback that was below the standard of what we're used to seeing around that university, he time and time again, whether it was Michigan, whether it was Penn State, stepped up in those big moments and big matchups and found a way to make plays for that team. So I've enjoyed his pre-draft process. Guy didn't work out at the combine. Guy didn't work out at his pro day. He has lived stress-free, knowing that everyone knows and believes what a great football player that guy is. And he's been getting ready to just play football, which is a welcome change to the normal rigmarole we see in the pre-draft process.
All right, we know you've got your own bracket going on the show with some fast food selections. But before we let you run, give us your favorite upset pick in the first round of the tournament.
Favorite upset pick in the first round, I got to go with my thick king, DJ Burns, over at NC State over Texas Tech. The 11 seed's the new 12 seed is what I have heard. And anytime you got like a 6'7", 290-pound dude with silky smooth feet, I got to follow him to freedom.
All right. You and JVT ride in the Wolf Pack, baby.
Let's go.
Mike, always appreciate it. Great stuff, man.
Thanks, guys.
Wolf Pack, right here. Yeah? Right? You got to do the thing. You got to do the hand thing.
DJ Burns is
Guns
a man.
up.
He's a man.
Wolf Pack. That's Jonathan Von Tobel. I'm Tim Murray. It is VSiN Primetime Best Bets coming up on the other side.
This is VSiN Primetime with Tim Murray and Jonathan Von Tobel on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Check out vsin.com/subscribe, folks, and sign up for a VSiN Pro subscription for less than $200. VSiN Pro subs get everything we do up on the website. That's right, daily best bets, betting splits, courtesy of DraftKings, where you can see money and bets and where they're all going for every single game, not just for today, but future events as well. Access to the March Mania betting guide, absolutely fantastic. And, of course, everything. That means you can watch the shows and check out our daily write-ups in every single sport, every single day. vsin.com/subscribe, promo code PRIME. Get an annual subscription. Yep, a full year for less than $200.
That's Jonathan Von Tobel. I'm Tim Murray. It is VSiN Prime Time. Threw up a poll question in the old Twitter sphere. Which 5 seed or which 12 seed is most likely to pull the outright upset? And right now, 739 votes in. James Madison, 40%.
Wow.
25% on the Lopes of Grand Canyon. 21% on McNeese State. And our Blazers, JVT, 13%.
I like
UAB.
We're lonesome.
Good. No
It's
one
just
believes
us.
in us. Come on, Blazers. The boys from Alabama, Birmingham. So feel free. You have plenty of time to chime in at one Tim Murray. JVT retweeted it as well. Hello to YouTube, as we're always streaming our first hour for free. VSiN.com, or excuse me, YouTube.com/VSiN Live. Let's get to our best bets. JVT, we've got 2 games tonight in college hoops, one starting momentarily. Grambling State is catching 5 at DraftKings, 4.5 elsewhere around the market, total of 134.5. No bet for me personally. I did see over at vsin.com/picks, a little spoiler alert, Wes Reynolds threw in Grambling plus the 5. So looking to take the dog. Now, the dog, of course, did win outright in the 16 versus 16 matchup yesterday. Wagner was catching 3 and ended up winning by 3. So no play for me there. Then late night, Colorado and Boise State. Number has been bet up as the day has gone on. Now Colorado laying 3.5 with a total of 144. So I know neither of us have a play in the NCAA tournament here this evening. I do have a college hoops play, which I'll get to and give you very minimal insight because no one cares about the NIT. But we do have a pretty decent-sized NBA card.
Yeah.
Every day, you could check VSiN.com for Jonathan Von Tobel's write-ups and figure out which superstar is not playing, because Giannis is one of them tonight.
Hey, at least they ruled him out early.
That's
like
true.
At least they didn't play the
Found
stupid
out this
game
morning, at least. Yeah.
The dumb game they played over the weekend where they had him warm up. Doc Rivers told the media that he looks like he's going to play, and then he ends up not doing it. So at least they didn't do that. We got that pretty early. I think about 8 a.m. Pacific time I got news that he wasn't going to play, so good for the Milwaukee Bucks on doing that. Celtics are an 11-point favorite. Every game on the card, Tim, save for 2, has a double-digit spread today.
Woo!
And one of the 2 that doesn't have a double-digit spread, well, you're laying 9. So essentially, of the games, if you're playing favorites, you need every one of them but one to win by double digits today. So it's that kind of a day. For this one, look, I would say that you can make the argument that Milwaukee is not better. Again, you can never say they're better without Giannis, but they're just a different team. They're 3-1 straight up and against the spread in the 4 games they've played without Giannis Antetokounmpo, and we were kind of talking about this the other day, where they revert to just kind of a different version of the Portland Trailblazers than the years past, which is Damian Lillard to the point of attack with the ball in his hands in almost every single possession and surrounding him with some guys who can knock down some jump shots, and you go from there. Chris Middleton has looked fantastic and healthy now, too. Obviously, you have the other pieces around them and Bobby Portis and Brook Lopez, so I think that when you're talking about a team in Boston that's at the top of their power rating, wouldn't say no at all if you wanted to take 11 with the Milwaukee Bucks. And we've seen them pull it off already now twice in the last month, right? Didn't have Giannis against the Los Angeles Clippers, covered and won every single number there. And then, of course, just the other day against the Phoenix Suns. For me, 2 bets a little bit later in the day. Both will tip after 7 p.m., so I get to sit down and watch this in misery on my own in the darkness. Wife's going out, so I can't wait. I get everything all to myself. Memphis Golden State will start here. Golden State's laying 11. There's like a smattering of 11.5s out there, but a vast majority of places are at 11 with a total of 218.5 or 219. Desmond Bane came back 2 games ago for the Memphis Grizzlies and has looked pretty solid in his 2 games so far. And to give the Grizzlies some credit, they have not given up on this season. They are still playing some pretty decent basketball on the defensive end. They're at least trying. They went to Sacramento the other day, pushed the Kings to overtime. This team's really fighting almost every single day. And when you look at it, Tim, expand outwards past the 2 games we're talking about, Desmond Bane, Grizzlies 10-6 against the spread in their last 16. A defensive rating in those 16 games actually better than their season-long defensive rating, which is good for 11th in the NBA right now. So this team's playing really well. We've talked about the way that the games have changed with the way they're being called. It benefits teams like the Memphis Grizzlies. It doesn't really benefit a ton a team like the Golden State Warriors, where you can kind of watching Steph Curry having to have time getting some space and running around the way that he generally does and not getting calls. So I think that this is kind of a mini rivalry. These teams play each other pretty well for the most part. Took 11 here with the Memphis Grizzlies. Again, there's a couple of 11.5s that are out there if you'd like, and I think it's playable down to 10. And then the shop, the wood. Went to the wood shop and we laid it down. Laid 12 with the Los Angeles Clippers here on the road against the Portland Trailblazers.
How many bets have you put in on the Clippers?
Quite a few.
Every time they play, you've got to play on.
I've generally had a pretty good read on the team for the most part this season, so we'll see if this comes out. And by the way, there's 13s appearing right now, so the market seems to be in agreement with me.
Hashtag sharp card.
Yep, we'll see what happens. And I also played this because you figure on the injury report, both Norman Powell and Terrence Mann are there. Every indication that Terrence Mann is going to play. I think Norm's going to do it too. So part of it was late 12 with a number that'll probably close around like 13 if both of those guys play. But this seems like a get-right spot for the Los Angeles Clippers. And while everybody's freaking out, and by the way, I like talking smack, so you want to send me anything, I'm down, because they're 8-10 straight up in the last 18 games. They've only covered 5 of those games. But in those 18 games, James Harden has missed time. Paul George has missed time. Kawhi Leonard has missed time. You have a lot of these guys that have been in and out of the lineup. It's been different guys. And, Tim, they've been through this stretch that's been brutal. These last 2 days, Tuesday and Wednesday, Monday and Tuesday, that's the first time they've had 2 days off in over 2 weeks. So, this has been a pretty busy schedule for the Clippers. So, you take some lumps. You finally get 2 days of rest. Looks like you might get a little bit healthy here. None of your big 3 are on the injury report. And the Portland Trailblazers, a non-serious team, which are just rolling out some lineups that don't really make a ton of sense. I think this does scream get-right spot against a lesser opponent. So, again, late 12, plenty 12.5, 13s out there, but I still think there's a straggling 12 out there, and I think that's still a playable number here for the Clippers.
All right, after Boise State and Colorado conclude, just sit back and have yourself a nightcap and watch the Clippers hopefully destroy and dismantle the Portland Trailblazers. All right, one play for me. We threw in an NIT play yesterday. Didn't really need to give much analysis because it is the NIT and people don't really care. I'm taking Appalachian State. The boys from Boone.
All right, that's it.
I'm taking the 8. There's an 8 out there. They're playing Wake Forest. I don't know how motivated Wake Forest is. I'm sure Appalachian State, bummed that they didn't win the Sun Belt, beat James Madison twice this year. Very good defensive team. Give me the 8. App State, boys from Boone. We move on. Maybe an in-game play. That worked out well yesterday on the NCAA tournament. So there you go. Our plays for tonight. JVT, taking the candy with the Grizzlies. Get 11.5 out there right now. And laying the wood with the Clippers, 12.5. And I'll take the 8 with the boys from Boone.
And we're also, we kind of saw this yesterday. In some of these lopsided matchups where you're talking about a team that has something to play for versus a team that doesn't really. Yep. We saw a couple yesterday, right? They got ugly, where these teams got absolutely smoked. So you might see some of those results as you kind of move forward. And you're starting to see that in these point spreads, right? When, again, today, of the 7 games, 5 of them have double-digit spreads. 1 of them has a 9-point spread, and there's only 1 coin flip spot due to injury. So this is going to be, it's a wild and wacky time here in the NBA. All
right. It was a good day yesterday. JVT nailed his college play. I went 2-0 with an in-game play and a pre-flop play, so hopefully we can keep the mojo going, and hopefully I can learn how to speak English and also learn how to count, because we did get a tweet, and thank you, as always, for the tweets. Always tweet us at @1TimMurray, @MeJVT. Robert says, first tip of the first game tomorrow, and this was at the opening of the show, is 18 hours and 4 minutes away. I think I said 12 hours. So I was a little off.
You said a little less than 12 hours.
A little less than 12 hours. I was a little bit off, but that is where we stand. All right, take a look real quickly at the VSiN betting splits on these 2 games that are about to tip off in the NCAA tournament. 61% of the handle, 54% of the bets on the Bobcats of Montana State. They are up to a 5-point favorite. This game about to tip off. 51% of the money on the under, while 60% of the bets on the over. As for the evening affair, Colorado and Boise State, 70% of the bets at DraftKings are on the Buffs of Colorado. We've seen the market move towards Colorado up to 3.5. This game really, fascinates me, JVT. When you look at Boise State, we kind of picked out the spot for New Mexico in the Mountain West quarterfinals last week. We felt like the Lobos were going to be the right side. Desperation, it worked out well. Is Boise State getting a little overlooked here? Market going up to 3.5. Me and you, we love this guard play of Degenhart and Max Wright. Long guards. They can shoot it a little bit. Not a great three-point shooting team, but can get hot. We saw it against San Diego State in the regular season finale. Boise State went to Viejas and beat San Diego State.
Yeah, I mean, I would think so. And I think if this continues to climb, because we got plenty of time until tip-off, it might get me in, right? They might drag me back in here for a play-in game.
Once you let me out,
yeah, right.
Drag me back.
But I agree with you. Good perimeter defense. The team that plays at a slow pace, can shoot efficiently, can rebound very well, is the best offensive and defensive rebounding team in the Mountain West.
Little primetime primer. Tomorrow, those games will be started before we hit the airwaves, so we got to touch on all of those games. More to come. We're free on YouTube right now, youtube.com/VSiN Live. It's VSiN PrimeTime.
This is VSiN Primetime with Tim Murray and Jonathan Von Tobel on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Never been a better time to have skin in the game with DraftKings Sportsbook, because right now we have a VSiN exclusive offer for new DraftKings customers. Earn a $500 bonus bet for every $1,000 you wager. You can earn up to $2,500 worth of bonus bets in your first 3 days on DraftKings. Don't wait. Download the app now. Use code PRIME, PRIME, when you sign up. Earn a $500 bonus bet for every $1,000 you wager now.
That is Jonathan Von Tobel. I am Tim Murray. How about this? Because this is the time, ladies and gentlemen, of trends. People love trends. Some can be important.
Every day is a day of trends.
So Evan Abrams over at the Action Network put this out there in his article. Clemson has only 6 Sweet 16s in modern tournament. Brad Brownell, their head coach, 2-7 lifetime in the NCAA tournament. Tigers had 5 losses by 1 possession this year. New Mexico, who they will be playing, is 6-12 in the tournament despite getting a 3-7 seed 8 times. The Mountain West double-digit seeds are 1-26 straight up this century.
Wow. Not good.
Come on, Lobos! Don't let us down. You know, everybody jumping on the Lobo train. These 2 guys on VSiN PrimeTime, we loved them so much, we took a terrible number on them to make the Final Four.
We've been here.
We believed in you.
Right.
Albuquerque, these guys.
We loved you at your loss to Air Force, all right? So everybody else, post Mountain West Championship, you get in the back.
Yeah. When you were in the midst of a 4-6 stretch to close out the regular season and looked like you weren't going to make the tournament, who still had that Final Four ticket? Because we couldn't get a refund on it. We did.
Who sat up there at Victory Burger and watched you go to Boise State and lose in a somewhat competitive 10-point loss and still never lost hope? This guy right here.
Yeah. These guys, these jabronis, we believe in you. Don't let us down. Now, New Mexico is guaranteed to at least win the national championship because they're 8-0 ATS on a neutral this year. One of the random stats that I found this week when doing research. Did you know that if you take the data from this past week, that's a huge sample size. New Mexico's 5th in the country. Just facts, science. New Mexico, baby. Don't let us down against Clemson. Don't let PJ Hall go to work on you inside. But
just give me one win.
In all reality, when you look at this game, this is a game that we have talked about a lot. This was a team that I think you and I circled. Well, we circled very early, maybe a little too early. I love the guard play. What worries you? Because we've talked so much of the positivity around New Mexico. On the negative side of things, what worries you? Because our good friend, Jim Root, who may or may not be Benedict Arnold for going with Clemson, he believes in the Tigers in this spot. What would worry you about the Lobos as a 2-point favorite against Clemson?
I think the obvious one would be if they go cold from beyond the arc. They're not the best 3-point shooting team in the country at all, right? They're 205th in the country in 3-point shooting. In Mountain West play, they didn't improve. They only made a third of their 3-point attempts, and they take a low rate of 3-point attempts. In fact, they were dead last in the Mountain West in 3-point rate, and in the country, they're 335th. So they don't. Not only do they not shoot the ball well, they shoot at a very low clip. So I think that's like the number one thing that might bother you. I think the other is, while you have a very unique front court that's got a lot of versatility to it, one of your key players is a freshman in JT Toppin, who won Mountain West Freshman of the Year. But, you know, when you get some young guys on a stage like this, you don't know how they're going to perform. Colorado State has a bunch of guys who have been playing college basketball for a little bit now. But the good part, I think, that offsets that, obviously, is his senior-laden backcourt led by Jalen House, Jamal Mashburn, and Jamal Baker coming off the bench. But I think for me, those are the top 2 things. I know that there are some folks that have invoked that defensively they have some issues, and at times they've had some poor performances in Mountain West play, but they were still an above-average defensive team and a top 20 team by defensive metrics so far this season. The top, I think there's like 23, 24 right now, and as we mentioned, 5 of the last 6 opponents limiting them to less than a point per possession. So I think shooting and youth are probably like those 2 keys that were at the top of the list.
Yeah, a couple things about Clemson. Clemson got off to a really hot start this year. They got some big wins, right? They beat South Carolina. They beat Alabama. They beat Boise State. They beat UAB. They beat TCU. That's 5 NCAA tournament teams they beat early on in the year. But since the new year, they're 10-10. So they seem to have come back down to earth. You look at the metrics, they're 36th in KenPom, which is not the worst 6 seed, but it's certainly not the best. BYU, by far and away, is the best. Things that worry me, PJ Hall down low, big center, 6'10". Can he go to work on JT Toppin when you think about New Mexico, that guard-laden team? And we've talked about it all week. 3-point variance. Those teams that have great 3-point shooters, if they get hot, you could be in trouble. And Joe Girard, the transfer from Syracuse, is very capable of doing that. 42% from 3. Now, New Mexico, on the flip side, one of the better teams in the country of defending the 3. So I think that contrast in style, Clemson plays at a slow pace. New Mexico plays at a breakneck pace. Very interesting to see those two, right? This is your classic styles make fights type of game. So I know we've talked about this game a lot, but I think it's one of the better and more intriguing first-round games of round one. It's on Friday, by the way.
Yeah. And I'd also point out, too, for the Tigers as well, one of the things I think you like that works in New Mexico's favor, outside of the lack of offensive rebounding, is they're not a team that forces turnovers at all. They were one of the worst teams, in fact, in forcing turnovers. And so if you're not going to try to steal some extra possessions from your opponent in a game in which you are the underdog, too, by the way, I should point out, that's not something that really works in your favor. You want to be able to steal a couple possessions here or there. And the fact that you're not a great offensive rebounding team to get an extra time in your possession or to force turnovers, again, to win the possession battle, that's something that, again, I think works against them.
You know, a game that we haven't talked about a lot, and we're going to do our best to get to every single game at some point today of the first round. By the way, underway, Montana State with a 3-point lead over Grambling State, 14 and change to go in the opening half there. Michigan State, Mississippi State opens up the NCAA tournament, and I do want to touch on that game shortly, but we have not really talked about the second game tomorrow, 12:40 tip, True TV in Omaha, BYU versus Duquesne. Now, we've spent a lot of time, maybe more so on other shows, across the country, the collective college hoop discussion of this team's overseeded, underseeded. You look at New Mexico being very underseeded based off of their resume. Duquesne should not be an 11 seed. Mm-hmm. BYU shouldn't be a 6 seed. And actually, they weren't supposed to be a 6 seed, but because of the fact that they can't play on Sundays, they had to get the 6 seed. I don't know how that all played out, but ultimately that was. BYU this year, I think, has been a pretty big surprise. We talked about them early, how they were the metrics darling. They were number 4 in KenPom heading into conference play and ultimately lost their first conference game to Cincinnati. Do you believe in this BYU team?
Not a ton, only because I think they're going to be a very wide variety. Like they're high variance.
They
right?
shoot a billion threes.
Yes, over 50% of their attempts come from beyond the arc. And we've invoked like 3-point shooting quite a bit when we've talked about some of these underdogs. The difference is that BYU shoots a billion threes, to use your term, but also plays at a breakneck pace, which doesn't really help you out in that regard. And I just think that when you rely so much on your jump shots falling like that, that causes variance. And when you run into a team like Duquesne, and I think some of this had to do with competition, but Duquesne's perimeter defense, at least for the most part, in conference play, 29.5% to opposing shooters and just over 30%. So they've been pretty good along the perimeter, at least in contesting shots. It's just as simple as if BYU gets cold, Tim, like they're going to put themselves in danger in almost every single. So I think, like, I believe in them in a game like this for the most part because I don't think Duquesne's very good. But winning 6 games, I just don't think the way that they play is conducive to sustainable success in a tournament setting like this.
Yeah, I mean, this is another game, maybe a poor man's New Mexico Clemson. I mean, this is a much bigger spread. Duquesne wants to make this ugly, right? Mm-hmm. They're a very good defensive team. They don't do much positively on the offensive side of the ball. And, look, the Atlantic 10 was not a great conference this year. Duquesne, when they played up, lost both games to Dayton by double digits. This is a team that ultimately, though, beat Dayton in the quarterfinals to make this magical run. And it has to be said, Keith Dambrot is retiring. So do you get a little – I know everybody's motivated. It's the NCAA tournament. But do you get a little extra something from this Duquesne team? Do you get a Vermont Tom Brennan type of performance, Sorrentine from the parking lot when
Does LeBron call the team?
Ooh.
Motivate them.
I don't know. Does he play? He hasn't played college basketball. Is he still eligible?
Yeah, maybe. It'd be great. Actually, right. I've been part of the team this whole time, and I'm ready to go.
He's going to take a leave of absence from the Lakers to have one last dance. No, I'm not even going to say it. I thought about it. I'm not going to say it.
Okay, don't say it. Say it.
If he was on Duquesne, would they win the national championship?
Yes. Stop.
That's Jonathan Von Tobel. I'm Tim Murray. Where's the money coming on? Where are the sharp angles? We'll get to all of that top of the hour next.